In the news this week, Tesla recalls 2 million cars, Asus misinterprets AMD's CPU warranty for Threadripper, the PS5 Pro has some specs, maybe, and Valve says you should stop inhaling the Steam Deck fumes. We're looking forward to the new round of Reddit posts where people grind them up in a pestle and mortar and then snort it instead. Let's get started. Not with that, like the news. Let's start with the news. Before that, this video is brought to you by Lian Li and the O11D Evo XL. The O11D Evo XL builds upon the long-standing strengths of the O11D series by adding new features, like a rotated GPU layout, to showcase the most important part of a build. The Evo XL also uses a removable motherboard tray that can adjust for different heights, making it tunable for every style. Additionally, these cases use Lian Li's compartmentalized approach to design to keep cables cleanly hidden behind the back of the case. Learn more at the link in the description below. Up first, AMD Threadripper 7000 CPUs have a fuse that flips when you overclock them. This doesn't hurt anything, and AMD says it doesn't really void the warranty. It definitely gives them a mechanism to see if you've overclocked it, though. This is something that Twitter user David Juan posted with an image that shows a warning message popping up when enabling overclocking on what's apparently an Asus TRX 50 motherboard. Caution, it reads, AMD processors disclaimer. Overclocking mode will now be permanently enabled for this processor and effectively voiding warranty as previously stated. Tom's Hardware reached out to AMD for clarification and got this response, quote, Threadripper 7000 series processors do contain a fuse that is blown when overclocking is enabled. To be clear, blowing this fuse does not void your warranty. Statements that enabling an overclocking or overvolting feature will void the processor warranty are not correct. Per AMD's standard terms of sale, the warranty excludes any damage that results from overclocking or overvolting the processor. However, other unrelated issues could still qualify for warranty repair or replacement. The source of the confusion seems to come from the fact that there are potentially two different messages that can pop up when overclocking the processors. One is AMD's official message when using things like PBO, and then the other one is up to the motherboard manufacturer, and it's up to them to properly interpret AMD's official warranty guidelines when printing that message to screen. AMD uses hardware fuses on its CPUs for various reasons. We saw that when we did our lab tour documentary, and these range from the subject of this story to simply fusing off a new CPU to market as a particular SKU, all the way to vendor locking certain CPUs to motherboards, like in the case of Lenovo Threadripper workstations, which, by the way, is in and of itself a horrible anti-consumer practice from Lenovo, and also kind of anti-Earth at the point, too. Although AMD has corrected Asus' statement, this is still a feature that could be used to wrongfully reject a warranty, or in the very least, to point at overclocking as a root cause for a failure, whether or not that's actually the case. Next one, Tesla is issuing a voluntary recall, which is a specific thing in the legal world of the US, for over 2 million of its cars over an issue with the Autosteer feature and associated software. This applies to some Model S cars from 2012 onward, Model X from 2016 onward, Model 3 from 2017 onward, and Model Y from 2020 onward. That's almost everything Tesla's ever made at this point, and Autosteer is a part of Tesla's SAE Level 2 Advanced Driver Assistance Package, as they call it, or Basic Autopilot, along with the traffic-aware cruise control. According to the NHTSA documentation on the recall, the problem is that when Autosteer is engaged, it's possible for the driver to misuse the feature and to pay less attention than is necessary to ensure safe operation. This has been such an extreme problem as to be linked to deaths in some cases, hence why we're talking about this story. Some examples of intentional misuse from the driver as opposed to maybe malfunction from the software would be leaning back and watching videos on the phone while flying down the highway and letting the car steer itself. That kind of thing is what's in question here from the documentation. Drivers are still considered the operator of the vehicle while using autopilot, so it's not actually full self-driving. The car monitors both the road conditions and the driver to deny turning on features if conditions aren't right, and in theory to ensure that the driver is paying attention while it's enabled. Although there are plenty of videos of people irresponsibly and intentionally tricking these mechanisms, they're not the smartest mechanisms from the videos we've seen about that, but ultimately you're kind of just screwing yourself and whoever you run into if you do that, because that is putting an awful lot of trust into the car to not do something wrong. So don't do that. The NHTSA document reads, quote, "In certain circumstances when Autosteer is engaged, if a driver misuses the SAE Level 2 Advanced Driver Assistance feature such that they fail to maintain continuous and sustained responsibility for vehicle operation and are unprepared to intervene, fail to recognize when the feature is canceled or not engaged, and or fail to recognize when the feature is operating in situations where its functionality may be limited, there may be an increased risk of collision." Tesla maybe obviously didn't agree with the NHTSA analysis of the situation, but they're going ahead with the recall to resolve the administration's official engineering analysis because the next step would be a legal one anyway. This recall doesn't require Tesla owners to schedule a service or pay any money. It's supposed to be handled over the air with a software update, and from what we understand, the update started rolling out to vehicles with an in-cabin camera and autopilot hardware version 4.0 or 3.0, and December 12th would mark the date this started with software version 2023.44.30. Other Teslas that don't have in-cabin cameras or have older autopilot hardware versions will get an update at a later date. Now, our understanding of the changes right now is that the Autosteer feature won't be removed entirely, but will add additional safety checks and alerts to encourage the driver to actually pay attention. So examples of these included keeping the hands on the wheel and paying attention to the roadway. There are also additional and new checks that will engage when the driver tries to use Autosteer off of major roadways or highways. And finally, the car may suspend, this is actually pretty interesting, may suspend the driver's option to enable Autosteer at all if, quote, the driver repeatedly fails to demonstrate continuous and sustained driving responsibility while the feature is engaged. We're not car reporters, so we don't know if this is a first or not. You can let us know in the comments if you're aware of something like this, but certainly it may be an industry first, as far as we're aware, to actively deny a user access to a feature they paid for, specifically because of what the vehicle perceives of as being potentially dangerous behavior, as opposed to, say, you forgot to pay the DLC cost for your heated seats or something. Right on the heels of the PS5 Slim launch, there are new rumors and leaks of an alleged PS5 Pro. These come from the user randomlyrandom67 on Reset Era forums. We look forward to reading about how random they are on their MySpace bio. The post summarizes previous leaks, primarily, such as the PS5 Pro's alleged codename Trinity, its AMD SoC codenamed Viola, and the CPU upgrade being, quote, rather small. The new information purported by this rumor post includes a few interesting details, like the SoC being fabricated on TSMC's N4P process node. The leaker also expands on the alleged specs, saying that the CPU will still be based on Zen 2 architecture for compatibility reasons, with a maximum boost clock of 4.4 GHz, but only 8 MB of shared L3 cache. Randomly Random 67 also posted GPU specs. Allegedly, this will be based on RDNA 3 with RT improvements from future RDNA 4 designs. The rumor claims 56 active CUs on a total of 3584 shaders, running at a 2 GHz target. It also claims 16 GB of 18 gigabit per second GDDR6 VRAM on a 256-bit memory bus. On top of those rumored specs, the leak also claims that the PS5 Pro's SoC would feature an XDNA 2 NPU, which would be used, in theory, to perform hardware acceleration of Sony's own temporal machine learning process for its upscaling techniques. And supposedly, this will be a core feature in the PS5 Pro to get higher than 30 FPS performance at 4K resolution with some games. Now, finally, the poster claims that Sony's reveal will be September of 2024, which is so far away as to be basically an irrelevant point right now, just because a lot can change in that time, even if this is accurate today. Sony did have a State of Play event, though, in September 2023, so the timing might make sense. And as usual with these things, we'll just have to sort of wait and see if it ends up being true. Up next, E3 is dead. Good riddance. We previously reported on E3 2023 being canceled this year for both the online and in-person events, and that was at a time when it was easy to speculate that this would be the ultimate outcome, the death of the event. Turns out, the speculation was right. The ESA decided officially to kill E3, the gaming industry's formerly largest annual event, and the E3 website has been updated to a single page with a short statement. Quote, "After more than 2 decades of E3, each one bigger than the last, the time has come to say goodbye. Thanks for the memories. Good game, well played. Now, E3 for many years was strictly a media and industry event with what we thought were stringent and unfair admittance guidelines. And then more recently, the event, well, actually on and off, but the event, when it started to struggle at various points over the years, decided to open up the doors to more general attendance and sell admission tickets to the public up until its final in-person year in 2019. There was one more E3 after that in 2021, but that was strictly online. Interest from large industry players started to wane as console manufacturers and large publishers started hosting their own events, which are logistically, in some cases, easier for large companies. On top of that, shows like Summer Game Fest and the Game Awards seem to have taken on the spiritual successor role to E3 in the public eye. And we want to give a shout out to PAX here as well. PAX has multiple events. We've been mostly to the Seattle and the Boston-based ones over the years, and that has been an increasingly relevant event. It is also basically entirely consumer-focused. There's booths there for the games. They do some announcements, but it's more of a consumer show. We've been to that one a lot, and it's great. I mean, every time I've been, we've really enjoyed it from both the sort of fun side and from the professional side. Seems like that has a lot of potential to pick up the reins too. If you're curious, it's not uncommon for these events to cost companies upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars just for the booth space alone. This is primarily true for the large booths. Some of the smaller ones, like the 5x10s or the 10x10s, that often get absorbed into like an indie mega booth type of thing, those are more affordable, but still expensive. But these large game publisher booths are extremely expensive. And to give a concrete example, CES is kind of the hardware industry's equivalent, in a sense, of E3. It faces stiff competition from Computex, which has been chewing away at its sort of the interest level over the years. This is the one we favor now. But CES had a vendor where we confirmed they spent $2 million between the booth space, the construction of the actual physical booth, the staff on site, and whatever logistics and internet services and all that stuff that they had just a few years ago, right before COVID. So the show is very expensive. Not a surprise to see publishers starting to go their own way instead. Maybe the biggest pitfall here is that smaller game developers have fewer opportunities to try and get out in front of people because they need that discovery platform, but they can go get that from these other shows, again, like PAX being a great example. Speaking of things shutting down, game development studio Fantastic, which makes the game the day before, has shut down. So this game was so bad that IGN posted a negative review of it. Like, think about that. IGN gave something a 1 out of 10. Now, the writing was on the walls. In fact, the walls were already up and there was already writing on it, but they still gave it a 1 out of 10. That's impressive. The Steam reviews sit with an overwhelmingly negative rating, with only 15% of the nearly 22,000 reviews, right now anyway, being positive. Fantastic's website has been updated with a single image statement. It says, quote, "Today we announced the closure of Fantastic Studio. Unfortunately, the day before has failed financially, and we lack the funds to continue. All income received is being used to pay off debts to our partners." Now, as of right now, the servers for the day before and for their previous game, Prop Night, are both still live, but a company with no money or a company that just ends up closing is not going to be able to sustain those servers for very long. Many of the users on Steam from the reviews we were reading are calling the game a scam due to a huge disconnect between the gameplay promised by the studio during development and what actually launched to early access. In short, the game was supposed to be an open-world MMO, but what people got to play was more in line with an extraction shooter, and specifically a really, really bad one. It is impressive how bad that game looks. We didn't get a chance to play it. I guess we technically still could, but that's okay. Don't need to take every opportunity to have fun. But Fantastic's statement also attempts to refute the scam claims, talking about how the funding worked for the game. Quote, "It's important to note that we didn't take any money from the public during the development of the day before. There were no pre-orders or crowdfunding campaigns. We apologize if we didn't meet your expectations. We did everything in our power, but unfortunately, we miscalculated our capabilities." Frankly, it'd be great if we saw that more often as the answer. You can use that in many places, like getting pulled over for speeding. Miscalculated the capabilities of this pedal. Making a bad CPU or GPU. We miscalculated our capabilities. Can we have money now? Speaking of miscalculating capabilities, the US government says something else to NVIDIA. Following up last week's story where the government effectively told NVIDIA deal with it in terms of export restrictions on AI processors to China, US Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo had an interview with Reuters where she said that NVIDIA, quote, can, will, and should sell AI chips to China because most AI chips will be for commercial applications. This is following her prior statement that, using the first person, I will block any attempts to basically just barely comply with the TPP, the processing power restrictions. That was kind of the context of that last one. So talk about a huge turnaround in the past week, because Raimondo told Jensen Huang directly in front of an audience, and he was apparently in that audience, that short-term revenue didn't matter and that she would be threatening further restrictions on NVIDIA's exports to China if they continued to tweak their products and cut them down to comply with those TPP restrictions in ways that were sort of just barely complying with it. So the citation here was about national security over short-term profits, and that's in the last week's episode if you're curious about it. But the new story is in this interview, Raimondo went on to clarify that, quote, what we cannot allow them to ship is the most sophisticated, highest processing power AI chips, which would enable China to train their frontier model. The timing here is interesting, as there are rumors swirling that Huawei is gaining ground in the AI chip-making segment. These would, of course, be domestic to China and would be much easier for Chinese companies to get. The implications around this get into geopolitical issues that we don't comment on as a policy. However, there's likely a desire from the US government wanting NVIDIA to stay in demand while at the same time restricting the top processors from leaving the country, or at least from entering certain countries. Now, up next, maybe this is all related, because the rumors of the NVIDIA RTX 3050 6GB have come back. That one probably not too powerful. It probably will be permitted to be shipped. The allegedly upcoming 3050 6GB will cost $180 to $190. Allegedly, according to a new rumor on BenchLife. The new GPU is purported to be a cut-down and clock-down version of the entry-level Ampere card in order to make it run on PCIe slot power only. That means it would have a total board power maximally of 75 watts. NVIDIA hasn't launched this low power or low cost of a GPU for a while. The last was maybe the 1650, at least in terms of relevant ones that we talk about regularly, and that can be bought for about $120 refurbished on Newegg. The slot power only GPU market should definitely be kept going though, because historically it's been possible to grab a used office PC for next to nothing or even free, and then add a slot power GPU to make a dirt cheap, super basic entry-level gaming PC. Those kinds of PCs are great for just cheap home use if you're on a restricted budget, or as, say, an educational opportunity for places like the Cramden Institute, which is a local e-waste and PC refurbishing group that we support, where they can use that to teach and let kids build an interest in PC gaming or PC building with older stuff that is still capable for older or simpler games. Up last, Valve has levied a severe verdict telling its users of the Steam Deck to stop doing one of the finest, most sophisticated traditions of owning a handheld console, sniffing it and inhaling deeply. We actually even had people email us about the exquisite smell of the Steam Deck's exhaust fumes back when it launched. So, I mean, at the time, I'm pretty sure we looked at that email and went, we can't do anything with this, and moved on with our lives. But here it has come back. So, in short, Valve says don't do that. Reddit user Metapod100 posted an exchange had with the Steam support team where the user asked the forbidden question, quote, is it safe to inhale the exhaust fumes from the top vent of the Steam Deck? It's somewhat of a meme to enjoy the fumes, but I think I kind of like it. Valve then weighed its options for 4 days before replying, which, to be fair, is only responsible for such a well-cultured issue as this. Although, kind of curious how much in legal consultation fees Metapod100 cost Valve here. Sadly, the response from Steam support member Sandler was pretty clear. Quote, thank you for contacting Steam support. As with all electronics, it is generally not recommended you inhale the exhaust fumes on your device. While there are no safety concerns with general usage, directly inhaling the device's vent fumes should be avoided. We understand that it may be a meme, but please refrain from this behavior for the safety of your health. Taking that information into deep consideration, Metapod100 said, I think I'm just gonna keep doing it. This actually puts Valve in a really tricky spot because they don't want to say, no, don't do that, and then have people think, oh my God, the Steam Deck as a whole is unsafe. But they also really don't want people just intentionally and directly breathing in exhaust fumes of hot plastic, fiberglass, and whatever thermal paste chemicals there are components. So, tough spot for them, but probably the right answer. It's always hard to kill a meme, but in this instance, unfortunately, the most advanced and sophisticated enjoyers of exquisite Steam Deck fumes will have to get their fix elsewhere. Maybe that's the next thing that could be bottled up and sold online. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more as always. Steam Deck. Buy our new Steam Deck fumes merch. We're not going to sell that. Don't go looking for it. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to buy things that aren't Steam Deck fumes, and we'll see you all next time.